So Emily's not going to be with us this morning.
I have to be in 2 places at once at noon. I have to go to the council meeting, so hopefully that'll line up with the public comment break.
Should be a quick meeting this morning.
That's what I was just going to say. Knock on wood, we shouldn't be too long.
Yeah.
Hey guys, just wanted to say hi. I'm back.
Ashley,
Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm listening in today mostly, so Nick's handling it, but just wanted to say hello.
alrighty, awesome.
Too.
Glad to have you back.
Thanks.
And congrats.
Thank you. It's kind of nice to be back. It's kind of nice to have him at daycare too.
Definitely can relate. I apologize in advance if I sound ultra nasally today. My sinuses. I promise that's all it is sinuses. Ha, Todd.
Already survived Omicron. All right, we can go ahead and get started. All right, so good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Monday, January 10th Board of Zoning Adjustments meeting to order. We will begin with roll call. Candace Forrest,
Present.
Todd James,
Present.
Tamar Aggins is absent. It's like Jose Alvarez is absent. Ramira Diaz is absent, and Alfonso Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you. And Matt Rufo.
Present.
All right, at this time, would the board make a motion to adopt the minutes from the December 13th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Rufo to adopt the minutes from our December meeting. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Aye.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest, yes. 4 yeas, no nays, the motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry, I see Tamara is here. Tamara Eggins,
Yes, sorry.
no problem. 5 yeas, no nays, the motion carries.
Thank you. Would the chair please read the special hearing rules for adoption?
Yes. Special public hearing rules for Board of Zoning Adjustments hearings held via video conference. Order of business. The order of business at the hearing shall be as follows. Call to order and roll call with recording of members present. Approval of minutes, reading and adoption of the hearing rules. Presentation of dockets, which includes staff presentation, applicant presentation, and questions from members. Recess for 30 minutes. Consideration of dockets, which includes public comment, rebuttal by applicant, questions from members, and voting, and adjournment. Presentation of dockets. The order of business for each docket shall be as follows. Presentation by the City Planning Commission staff or the Department of Safety and Permit staff. Presentation by the applicant or their representative. The appellant or applicant may appear on their behalf or be represented by a duly authorized agent. Only one representative may speak on behalf of a request and must pre-register with the staff of the City Planning Commission. Other representatives or speakers may sign up to provide comments during the public comment portion of the meeting. The applicant shall be allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Questions from members. The members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or applicant. Recess. The board shall take a 30-minute recess to allow members of the public to submit comments. Public comment. Rules. Only written public comment will be allowed. Live public comment will not be allowed. No member of the public may submit more than one written comment per agenda item. Time allowed for public comment. The public comment form will be made available at the start of the meeting and will close at the end of the 30-minute recess. Form. Public comments must be submitted electronically on the form provided by the City Planning Commission. Any comment missing this information will not be read aloud. Each submission must contain the commenter's first and last name, the commenter's address, whether the commenter is being paid in connection with his or her comments, and the agenda item. Reading of public comments. A moderator will read into the record all comments pertaining to that item that have been submitted in accordance with these rules. Comments will be read aloud in a normal speaking voice. The moderator will discontinue reading a comment once it exceeds 2 minutes. Rebuttal by applicant. Following the public comment period, if there is opposition, the authorized representative of the application is allowed a rebuttal not to exceed 5 minutes. Questions from members. Following the public comment and rebuttal, the members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or applicant. Voting. Making a motion. The member making a motion shall clearly state their name when making a motion. For example, I, Candace Forrest, move to approve or deny the request. Seconding a motion. The member seconding a motion shall clearly state their name when seconding the motion. For example, I, Candace Forrest, second the motion made by the other member. Statement by chair. The chair will restate the motion, confirming who made and seconded the motion. Voting. The chair will request a verbal vote from each member by roll call. Each member will indicate yay to vote in support of the motion or nay to vote in opposition. That's the end of the hearing rules.
Thank you. Would the board make a motion to adopt the special hearing rules?
I, Todd James, so move.
Alfonso, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to adopt the special hearing rules. Roll call vote. Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Aye.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest. Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion carries.
Thank you. In accordance with the adopted hearing rules, the public comment form link is available on the city's Granicus website as well as nola.gov/CPC. It will be available until the end of the recess, after which public comments will be read into the record as a part of consideration of dockets. As a reminder to applicants, action that the board takes today will be released in the form of a disposition notice by January 20th and sent via email and mail to the applicant, as well as posted on the One Stop app for other interested parties. Requests that the board votes to approve must show compliance with any noted provisos before the case is finalized and granted final approval. Item number 1, BZA docket 07421 has been withdrawn by the applicant. We'll begin with unfinished business for variances. The next item is BZA docket 07821 for the property at 10100 Morrison Road. Lynette Wharton is signed up to speak on behalf of this application, and following the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present. Aspen.
Yeah, this request was originally went to the Board of Zoning Adjustments at the November 2022 public hearing for variances from the provisions of Article 14, Section 14.3A1, Table 14-2, Article 14, Section 14.3A2, Article 14, Section 43B1, and Article 18, Section 1816B3 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the construction of a daycare with excessive front yard setback, a primary entrance not oriented to the street, insufficient ground floor transparency on the primary street, insufficient ceiling height, and parking as the predominant visual element. At the November meeting, the board granted a 60-day deferral to allow staff to work with the applicants to explore alternative methods to eliminate the requested waivers, such as subdividing the property with the adjacent childcare center owned by the same owners. Staff sought an interpretation from the zoning administrator and safety and permits and determined that combining the 2 lots and expanding the existing child care center was still trigger the need for a current front yard setback and current design standards. An expansion of the existing child care center at 10800 Morrison Road could be feasible, but may also trigger bringing the current child care center to current building code. The applicants have now proposed a new configuration showing an office and administrative building in the front of the site that was submitted on December 17th and 29th. The zoning administrator has confirmed that this front building would allow the child care center to be set back further from the street without the required building design standards. However, the front yard setback needs to be confirmed and further review is needed. Therefore, staff is recommending another 30-day deferral of the requested variances.
Ms. Gordon, you have 5 minutes to present.
Miss Gordon is currently out of the office. My name is Ricardo Tenorio. I am a draftsman in her office, so I'll be speaking on behalf of her for today. Yes, we would like to request a 30-day referral at this time for her being out, and some revisions have been made to the site plan to move it into regulations regarding the required front yard setback. It will be placed at 20 feet from the street. The parking is behind the structure now, so the ceiling height will be 12 feet. So we will be ridding of all of the variance requesting at that time by conforming to the current policy in place. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
Just a quick question of staff. You may mention in a report that the re-subdivision may still trigger front yard requirements. With that reconfiguration of the lot, the front yard rules will still apply because there's two frontages, or I thought when there's a single lot of record, it only applies to the lot facing a right of way that has the most narrow dimension.
It would still be, so it'd be a single lot of record, so it'd be still complying to like the most narrow. I showed the configuration to the zoning administrator and safety and permits, and he confirmed that, you know, even if it's an L shape and you build into the extension, it's still going to need those setbacks. And so it still need all the design standards because it's still considered a primary building on the site.
Okay. Just wanted to get that clarification. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we can go to the next item.
Okay, thank you. The next item is BZA docket 07921 for the property at 515 3rd Street. Kenner Carmody is signed up to speak on behalf of this application, and following the staff presentation, you'll have 5 minutes to present. Joseph.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me? Great. So this item, as Valerie Coyne said, is BZA 7921 for property located at 515 3rd Street. The request is for variances from the provisions of Article 11, Section 1133.8.1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit an addition to the construction of a single-family residence with insufficient rear yard setback. I apologize. This is for new construction of a single-family residence with insufficient rear yard setback. The rear yard is established as 20% of the lot depth or 20 feet, whichever is less. In this case, 20% of the 50.188 foot lot depth is 10.038, and thus being less than 15 feet establishes the minimum rear yard setback. The applicant is proposing the construction of a single family home that would have a rear yard setback of 2.270 feet, which is insufficient by 7.768 feet. This is non-compliant and is thus requesting a waiver of the standards as listed in Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, Table 11-2A. Since the November 22nd, 2021 meeting, the applicant submitted revised architectural drawings to the staff on December 28th. The staff determined that the revised drawings were satisfactory and resulting in the removal of the interior side yard setback waivers. However, due to the deck still being shown as 3 feet above grade to the finished floor and 2 feet and 3 inches from the grade to the bottom of the deck is still being considered as per the definition of deck as found in Article 26, Section 26.6. See page 4 of this report for more information on that. It is being considered as part of the main structure. The applicant has shown on revised plans that the new rear yard setback is 2 feet and 3 1/4 inches, which is slightly decreased from the plans of board previously reviewed as measured from the rear yard deck of the rear property line. This dimension is thus the proposed rear yard setback and resulting waiver request, which is moderately increased, is identified as 7 feet and 8 3/4 inches. Based on this report, the staff believes the applicant's requested variance of 7.768 feet fails to meet 3 of the 9 criteria of standards for variances of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, in that literal interpretation of the ordinance would not deprive the applicant of commonly enjoyed rights. The property regulations will not result in a demonstrable hardship, and the change is exclusively for the convenience and or profit of the owner. However, based on this report, the staff believes that a modified rear yard setback variance of 2.143 feet to permit a rear yard setback of 7.89 feet would satisfy the standards of variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f. Therefore, the staff recommends modified approval of a variance from Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, Table 11-2A rear yard, recommending a waiver of 2.143 feet, subject to 5 provisos.
Thank you, Joseph. Kenner Carmody, you now have 5 minutes to present.
Thank you. This is Kenner Carmody. I think the last time we spoke was November, end of November. As Joseph described, I've reduced the area of this rear deck to minimize or to eliminate the side yard waiver requests. But as Joseph described also, that there's still this request to have a deeper variance or a waiver request because of the height of the deck. So it still remains in the drawings, but I'd like to hear from the board and discuss what next steps might be if approved, or if not, what the next steps might be if I'm to withdraw this deck design and bring it into compliance as an 18-inch high deck above grade. So thank you again for taking a look at this, and look forward to speaking with you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Just wanted to make sure, Mr. Carmody, based on what the staff has recommended, the staff's recommendation is to have a setback of a little bit less of 2.143 instead of 2.270. So based on your comments, I just wanted to make sure that you understood what it was that they were proposing. They were just proposing slightly less of a waiver request.
Joseph, is that correct? I thought when I went through the report, the latest revised report, the modified approval was for the house itself and not the deck. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's correct. So the kind of gist of it is that the applicant is requesting the waiver to allow the deck. So that's kind of that 2-foot parameter, but as staff, we couldn't justify it based on the 9 criteria, but based on the lot characteristics and area kind of context, we, through our analysis, could justify the waiver of so this is the 2.14, this is the 0.143 depth from the setback requirement. So it's basically to the rear of the building line as opposed to the rear of the deck. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I believe so. So as I understand it, if I build or the house is built as designed, that's all good to go, because that's a demonstrable hardship. It's just such a small lot, and I've tried to only request for the house anyway, the absolute minimum required waiver request. So that's that 7 feet out of the 10 feet, or roughly speaking. And then in terms of the deck itself, that's really the issue here, at least in terms of how it's how it meets or does not meet the criteria. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. I think I'm clear on that. Just want to make sure everybody else is too.
So I remember when we spoke on this back in November, I thought one comment that was brought up was just bringing the steps down from the back portion of the house so that the deck itself was at a lower height. So it was no longer requiring any form of the setback. Was that ever still put into consideration? Or because I remember you did present that the intent of the design is so that it does come seamlessly off that kitchen area.
Mm-hmm.
But just trying to see if that was still ever put into consideration at all.
That is, yeah. I wanted to present this to the staff and to the BZA just to get a sense of if it's possible. But certainly, now let me ask you this: if I bring the deck down into compliance, steps coming off of the kitchen down to the 18 inches above grade, there's no, other than the modified approval of the principal structure, there's nothing else would need to be done. I could go to safety and permits and have this, we'll have the project permitted. Just wondering if the deck is not in question, and it is only 18 inches above in compliance with the CZO, do I need to come back and present that? Or if it's in compliance, it doesn't need to come before the BZA?
Joseph, you want to address that one?
Yeah, so I'll start by addressing it by saying that we do work with safety and permits on this on these waiver requests very closely, and so through both of our reviews, this is the nature of what is being requested, and so whether this gets approved by the board as the applicant is requesting, or modified approval by the staff, or denied, frankly, then they could go to their building permits. Sorry, that's incorrect. If it's approved either way, they can, we work with them to stamp the plans, then they can go to safety and permits thereafter. If it's denied, then the applicant would just have to revise the plans to meet the rear yard setback as denoted. But we're not seeing anything at this stage in both of our reviews that would require additional waivers.
I think the question was, if he lowered the deck, inherently from the report, you have what's within a modified approval. Does that modified approval push him to lowering the height of the deck or not?
So I think it would push the lowering of the deck. Not all of the deck, because in the way the plans are illustrated, the second and third floor create a cantilever condition over the deck. So they could, in effect, from I guess an architectural perspective, kind of build it up to that 3 feet height, and then have some kind of staircase or REM system, or however they want to lower the deck to get to that required 18 inches, or just eliminate the deck after that 2.143 waiver allowance.
All right, so what he's essentially saying is that the limits of the steps that would be above the 18-inch line would have to fall within the footprint of the cantilever above. So that just gives you some more clarity, but just based on what's within his plan, how they intend the deck to function, it sounds like the steps would need to be closer to the kitchen in order for you to have the flat area on the deck, in order for it to still provide seating area. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's what I'm tracking to.
Okay. So I guess if we follow the staff recommendation as is currently proposed, that would give you everything that you're looking for, but you would have to do that modification to the deck in some capacity.
So yeah, I think that's the case. I'll bring those steps down from the kitchen. I guess it'll create kind of a seating area, or you can sit on that, and then the deck is at 18, and then you can just get up from grade through some system that's not steps or not part of the deck, and then it won't have any rear, or won't have any side yard waivers, or and then we'll meet that modified approval for just the setback that goes to that cantilever condition, and then everybody will be square, I think, after that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, we can go to the next item.
We will now move on to unfinished business for decision appeals. BZA docket 06721 is an appeal of the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding the determination that the property has not attained legal non-conforming status for an office use. This appeal was deferred at the applicant's request at the August, October, November, and December meetings. We have Nicole Weber signed up to speak on behalf of the application, and following the safety and permits staff presentation, you will have 5 minutes to present.
Good morning, Nicole Weber, representing.
I'm
sorry. I'm going out of order. Apologize. I'm used to other hearings.
No worries. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Kindle. I'm the zoning administrator with Department of Safety and Permits. I take it we're moving forward with this today. I know it's been deferred at previous meetings, and I hadn't heard one way or another. But Nicole, we are moving forward today, correct?
We'd prefer not to, and that's what we were going to speak on.
Okay, so I don't know if you're requesting deferral, if we need to go through the full presentation. I'm good either way to read into the record, or to save y'all a little bit of time, we can, Safety and Permits doesn't have an objection to a deferral this month, but I think we would like to have this settled next month. So, so Nicole, if you could kind of provide additional documentation to us by the next meeting, that would be much appreciated.
That's absolutely the plan.
Okay, I will just do a brief presentation then. So BZA docket 6721. This is a request relative to 2612 Esplanade Avenue. The applicant appeal alleges an error in the decision by the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding the determination that the property has not attained legal non-conforming status for an office use. So this request has come up previously, has been deferred a number of times. The department has not received any additional information regarding this request. So at this time, if a deferral is being requested by the applicant, we have no objection to that deferral. Thank you.
Okay, now Ms. Weber, you have 5 minutes to present.
What we would like to do is since Safety and Permits is not opposed to it, ask the board if it would be to their satisfaction if we could come back at the following meeting with the documentation that we've been working on and present that and have that presented prior to the meeting for review. So the ask is for today.
Okay, thank you. I would just say, I'm sure you're aware of what the timeline is for submitting information for consideration. So just making sure that whatever you submit fits within that timeline so that the department has an opportunity to review and make any adjustments as if needed to their recommendation.
Yes, Commissioner.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, we can go to the next item.
Right, so now we will begin with the new business for variances. And at this time, the board may choose to consolidate the next two items, items 5 and 6, BZA dockets 001-22 and 002-22 as they're in conjunction with the same subdivision case.
Madam Chair, for motions in order.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to consolidate the next two docket items. Todd James, excuse me.
Tamara Egan, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Egan's to consolidate BZA dockets 001-22 and 002-22. Roll call vote, Todd James.
Yes.
Tamara Egan's.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Aye.
Matthew Rufo. Was that a yes? I'm sorry, cut off.
Yes.
Okay. And Candace Forrest, yes. 5 yeas, no nays, the motion carries. You can proceed with the consolidated items.
Thank you. And we have Amy Scandalino signed up to speak on behalf of this application, and following the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present. Rachel.
BZA 00122 is a request for variances from the provisions of Article 13, Section 13.3.A.1, Table 13.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance in conjunction with Subdivision Docket 7321 to permit the creation of a lot with insufficient lot area and insufficient lot depth. Article 13, Section 13.3.A.1 requires a lot area of 6,000 square feet for single-family residences. The applicant is proposing a new lot of record, lot F1A1, with 5,791 square feet, necessitating a variance for 208 square feet. Article 13, section 13.3.A.1 also requires a minimum lot depth of 100 feet. The applicant is proposing a new lot of record with 95.76 feet, necessitating a variance for 5.24 feet. The applicant has indicated the proposed lots as a result of subdivision docket 7321 will be improved with single-family residences in the future. However, there are no plans for the construction of these residences at the current time. The parcel currently contains a servitude of sewage and water board that runs through the applicant's property. The width of the servitude is 50 feet and is aligned with the width of the rest of Mark Drive. The applicant is in the process of dedicating this portion of the property to the city to create a true right-of-way for the proposed lots to front. The existing servitude restricts the applicant's ability to subdivide the property in a manner that meets the minimum lot depth and lot area requirements for the SRS district. Without this variance, applicant would be precluded from improving the property and it would remain vacant land in perpetuity. While the applicant could create just one lot instead of the two proposed that contains insufficient lot depth but sufficient lot area, 74% of lots surveyed do not contain sufficient lot area for the SRS district regulations, but are still able to construct a single-family residence in accordance with Article 25, Section 25.5.8.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. In addition, based on the 58 surrounding properties surveyed, 81% do not meet the minimum lot depth requirement of 100 feet. Based on this report, the staff believes the requested variances of Article 13, Section 13.3.A.1 meets 9 of the 9 criteria of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of the requested variances subject to 3 provisos. And I'll quickly do a presentation for BZA 00222 as well. BZA 00222 is a request for variances from the provisions of Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1, Table 13.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance in conjunction with Subdivision Docket 7321 to permit the creation of a lot with insufficient lot area and insufficient lot depth. Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1 requires a lot area of 6,000 square feet for single-family residences. The applicant is proposing a new lot of record, lot F1A2, with 5,792 square feet, necessitating a variance for 207.81 square feet. Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1 also requires a minimum lot depth of 100 feet. The applicant is proposing a new lot of record with 94.65 feet, necessitating a variance for 5.35 feet. Due to the special circumstances of the property as described in the presentation for BCA 00122, the staff believes the requested variances of Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1, Table 13.2 meets 9 of the 9 criteria of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of the requested variances subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you, Rachel. We have Amy Scandalito signed up to speak on behalf of this application. You have 5 minutes to present.
Hi, my name's Amy Scandaliato, 8480 Morrison Road, New Orleans, 70127. So when we bought this property, it's been vacant forever, basically. And it does have a servitude going right through the middle of it. And, when we bought it, we went out there and it had been dumped on tires, furniture, and, it's been a dumping ground for a long time. So after we bought it, we went out there and we were gonna start doing some clearing work and all, and getting our game plan together. And then it was like a couple weeks later, we went back out there and it was all gone. Everything was gone. It was all cleared, and we were like, well, gee, what's going on? So then it was like a couple of, a week or so later, we went back out there again, and they literally, they took up Mark Drive all the way from Hammond all the way to Dwyer through us. So after I had done some digging and some research, I had found out that Palmisano Construction was putting in the new street on Mark Drive between Hammond all the way to Dwyer, which actually goes right through the middle of our property. So, after working with the planning commission and, trying to come up with an agreement on what we could do, we decided that, I would do the re-subdivision and then, get the approval with you all for the insufficient lot depth. And the reason why it's an insufficient lot depth is because the street is cutting the property in half. So after this step, we would move forward to actually dedicate that portion of Mark Drive to the city of New Orleans, since it will become part of the street, from Mark Drive. And so, and like Rachel said, the majority of the lots in Donnaville subdivision all are approximately 95 feet in depth. So we're not creating anything out of the ordinary. Mark Drive, all the streets from us all the way to Reed, every one of those lots are like 95 feet in depth. So, we're not creating anything out of the norm. So it'll fit, right in with the rest of the neighborhood. And that's really it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, we can go to the next item.
All right, thank you. The next item is BZA docket 003-22 for the property at 115 through 129 Robert E. Lee Boulevard. Miles Granderson is signed up to speak on behalf of this application. And following the staff presentation, you will have 5 minutes to present. Joseph.
Good morning again. This is BZA 322, as Valerie Goins said, at 115 through 129 Robert E. Lee Boulevard. The request is for variances from provisions of Article 14, Section 14.3.8.1, Table 14-2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance in conjunction with subdivision docket 8221 to permit the creation of a lot with insufficient area, lot width, permeable open space, interior side setback, and aggregate of side yards for a shopping center. In accordance with Article 14, Section 14.3.8.1, Table 14-2, the minimum lot area for non-residential uses is 20,000 square feet. The minimum lot width for non-residential uses is 100 feet. The minimum permeable space is 20%, which for this petition lot of 17,734 square feet is 3,546 square feet. The required interior yard setback is for non-residential uses is 10 feet, and the minimum aggregate side yards for non-residential uses is 20% of lot width to maximum required aggregate 20 feet, which for the petition lot width of 77.33 feet is 20 feet. The applicant is proposing to finalize the subdivision to permit the continued operation of the existing multi-use commercial structure on a lot constituting 17,734.5 square feet with 77.33 foot lot width, 0 permeable open space, and maintain the structure to be built to each of the interior side yard property lines. The enumerated conditions are resultantly deficient by 2,265 square feet of lot area, 22.67 feet for lot width, 3.546.9 square feet of permeable open space, 10 feet for each interior side yard, and 20 feet for aggregate of the interior side yard. Based on this report, the staff does believe the request satisfies all 9 criteria as they pertain to the requested variances of Article 14, Section 14.3.8.1, Table 14-2, bulk and yard regulations for lot area, lot width, permeable open space, side yard setbacks, and aggregate of interior side yard setbacks. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of the requested variances subject to 5 provisos.
Thank you, Joseph. Miles Granderson, you have 5 minutes to present. Is he on the call?
Sorry about that. I didn't take mute up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hello, and thanks again to staff. You all probably remember that this is part of the same re-subdivision. This was before you as a variance for the vacant lot next to it in the strip mall in December. That was approved in a sense, although not officially. This lot was ostensibly approved with it because the resub creates the two lots. The dimensions of the vacant portion were established through BZA 7121 in December. So that basically leaves nothing other than what exists now to be what can be for the dimensions of this lot. Plus these are existing buildings. It's the Goodwill, the Anytime Fitness, Shiny Nails, and Subway. So the building exists. It takes up basically the entirety of this lot. It's within a strip mall formation, so it all makes sense. The one thing I will mention quickly here is the provisos included 1 through 5, I believe, were left in to coordinate with the provisos that were in BGA 7121, which was the vacant lot, which is going to have a new structure built on it to fill in that hole in the strip mall. However, here there is no new construction. This is just blessing the existing building as is, the existing Goodwill, Anytime Fitness, etc. So there won't be a building permit. So I don't know that it makes sense to have that proviso in there. And that really applies to everything from 1 to 5. So I guess what I would suggest is just that we approve this, but in recognition of the fact that unlike the other lot that's new construction, this is just existing. There is no permit. So we should probably eliminate the provisos for this one.
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
Just a quick question, Joseph, on that, just to that point on the provisos that Mr. Grandison is referring to. In either case, if we have those provisos or not, because he did mention that there's no building permit, just those provisos still apply, just so that it's a point of remedy, or is there any merit to us having to strike that item?
Yeah, so in reviewing the provisos, we definitely recognize that we communicated with the applicant previously last week about this, and so we definitely understand their point of view, especially in that no building permits are being sought at this time. From the staff's perspective, most of these provisos are similar to what was previously approved with 7121. This is a pared down list, and I think these were kind of curated, if you will, or to kind of remedy some of the existing conditions on the site, such as just assuring that there's a parking agreement, short-term biking, enclosed refuse and recycling containers in that to remedy to provide assurances for these things. And this is kind of a simple, the applicant is asking something, so the city is kind of looking for these assurances to be sure that if the waiver is granted as we're recommending, that it's providing just cause.
So, but essentially, if any future improvement or change in use, change in occupancy down the road was to occur, this would be there, and this would be some level of a flag so that those improvements can be done at a later date. If they're not a building permit now.
Right, that's a great question, and I will defer to BZA staff on that for their expertise.
I don't want to speak out of.
Just hold tight 1 second, Miles.
What was the question, Todd?
So if that is the case, and this is going to be there, is this for future remedy, or if that remaining proviso stays, as Joseph is speaking to, he said that, just to make sure that it's clarified at some point. So since they're not applying for a building permit at this time, does that mean that if any future work is to be done at the property, then it has to still come in compliance with the provisos that's being applied for now?
Yes.
Okay. So,
I
Mr.
guess,
Grant, you wanted to bring up a point? I'm sorry, Chairwoman.
I guess what I'm confused on is that the only one that references a building permit is the first proviso. The other provisos don't. So to your question, Commissioner James, are you saying that all of these provisos only are triggered upon requesting a building permit? Because the parking piece and the bicycle parking, none of those reference the building permit. Only the first one says prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Right. So, and I think that's where the confusion is coming in. It's something that's there because there isn't a building permit coming. That language is there. And let's say if something was to happen, an improvement was supposed to happen down the road, will this be a flag on that property?
Right, but in terms of the parking, won't that be required anyway, even though there's not a building permit being issued?
Not sure.
So, and again, I'd like to bring this back a little bit here to part of the reason why the variances are even necessary, both this one and the one in December, are because of a hole in the zoning code that does not account for having individual lots within a strip mall setup. Now, the definition of strip mall, indirectly acknowledges that it can happen because it notes that something along the lines of that it's usually a single lot, and then you would have maybe condos or rental units inside of it. But the fact that it notes that it's usually acknowledges that it doesn't always have to be, right? So there's an understanding that you can have these individual lots, and you have a strip mall, and look, it's a disfavored setup in 2022, but it is the setup. That setup's been there since the 50s, and we're acknowledging what's there. The parking is obviously shared parking, really actually on both sides of that. They've got it in the back and the front. It's shared parking for the entirety of the strip mall. I think when Joseph was speaking, I think he mentioned something about covered bike parking. I mean, these are, again, buildings that it's a building or buildings that exist today. The idea of doing major changes and going into Goodwill or to Anytime Fitness and saying, hey, we need to, make these changes, to your strip. I guess what we're saying here is we're just trying to acknowledge and respect the existing strip mall setup, which is nothing atypical or unusual for a strip mall setup. The only thing here that's really at all unique is the fact that our zoning code chooses to be ultra specific in the way that it's just designed. And when there's a specific scenario that it doesn't address well, we have problems and we have to come here. So
what we're trying to do,
if this were a new construction and we were building something, then it makes sense, but we're not building anything. So to change, doesn't really make sense to have any changes here.
And what we're trying to get clear, Mr. Granderson, is just making sure, because for me, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not saying that we're approving something with provisos that may or may not fit. But in terms of some of these provisos, it doesn't seem that it matters whether or not this is a new construction. So that's what I'm trying to get clarity on. In terms of the parking, that may not be something that only applies for new construction. So that's the part that we're trying to get clear from staff, is what out of these provisos would be applicable and what wouldn't. I don't know that anybody has said that none of the provisos are applicable. So that's what I'm just trying to get some clarity on.
And I guess I'm noting a few things, such as within the strip mall context, having a parking proviso that generally speaks to a different context might not make sense, right? Having a bike parking proviso that generally speaks to something other than a strip mall when we are in fact speaking of a strip mall might not make sense.
I mean, that may be your opinion, but I haven't heard staff say that doesn't make sense. So that's what I'm trying to get clarity on. And just practically speaking, I have visited strip malls that do actually operate that way, where there are parking stalls that are earmarked for certain businesses, or there are bike parking, and that's within the city. And one is actually not far from this particular site.
So to help simplify this, I see that Bob's camera came on. Mr. Rivers, if there's anything you might be able to help provide clarity on this, just trying to get some direction from the department.
Sure. And I apologize for coming on late. So I guess to me, the question is there, number one, is there harm by having these provisos on there. The inclusion of the provisos is, these are standard provisos that are included on any kind of comparable application. And so if there's no permit that is being required, they're not going to be detrimental to the applicant going forward. But in the circumstances where there is a permit in the future, then these standards, which are to ensure compliance with the zoning ordinance for that permit for whatever construction is going forward, they would be in place and they would be binding upon the property.
That's what I thought, which to me seems a little bit more of a preventative maintenance item for this site. So instead of the burden being kicked down the road for someone to come and apply for application at that time, at least everything is put in place at this date. So it's clear about what's necessary for it to be entitled at a later date, which to me seems appropriate.
Can I ask a quick clarification question on that one? Just make sure I understand it. So let's say if the Subway were to, or the Goodwill were to change tenants or just want to improve, and they go pull a interior build out permit, then that does that trigger it? And then does that Subway then have to plant a street tree? And if so, do they plant it directly in front of their building? Do they go plant it on Allen Toussaint now? That where, I guess I'm just, wondering what would, because again, this is a strip mall setup and it is a little different. I just want to understand fully, and I might just not be, just want to make sure I understand what it is.
Yeah, would the board like me to answer that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I guess two things from staff's perspective is that if these items in the provisos were met, for example, parking convenience or agreement was provided, documentation that for plans for bicycle park, if all that was resolved and we stamped this and moved along, stamped the plans and gave it back to the applicant, that would be in effect resolved for the nature of this variance. So I don't believe that different occupational license or business changes would then bring these provisos back because they've already been resolved. And two, as is in the nature of these provisos with the BZA, we do reach out to the relative departments, for example, the Department of Parks and Parkways, and if they say based on their regulations and guidelines that in this specific circumstance, a street tree, for example, is not needed every 30 feet, but maybe one every 50 feet, or just none at all, then that's something they would communicate to us, and then that would satisfy that proviso in that way. And so, from staff, we're kind of not conservative, but in the terms of, again, just providing assurances for provisos, as Bob said, in a way that of comparable kind of projects, even if this is a subdivision, we've kind of try to maintain that consistency through it. So I hope that answers the applicant's question.
Well, I'm not sure that it does. I'm not 100% sure. And in the context of a real estate closing where these questions need to be clear, if say Parks and Parkways, if that's going to be an issue that is maybe satisfied by the trees along Allen Toussaint right now, then it would be good to know that ahead of today and to be able to have that proviso either exist or not exist, rather than, sort of leave this and then still have that be something of an open question. Again, because this all pairs with real estate closings, hence the resub to sell the vacant lot. And so to have these open questions is, I understand what you're saying. It's just not, and this all may actually not be a non-issue based on what you're saying, but it may be, and I don't know that we have that answer now. And again, I would note that this is different. This is a strip mall, and as disfavored as it may be in 2022, it just is. It's a strip mall. It's not going to be. And so that paired with the lack of certainty, it's again, we have to understand it's a real estate closing. I mean, they need certainty. They can't not have it.
So I think the thing that's important at this point is no matter what, whether if this is being resolved at this point or pushed down the road, no matter what, any future work will still be subject to review and approval by a local authority. And in any case, especially like with the street tree, you would still have to do some form of application for a building permit, check with whatever would need to be approved at that date and time. But for example, with the street tree, it's still subject to review of Parks and Parkways. They may come back and say you don't need a street tree because of the solution. So you're never going to get that type of an answer up front unless you're putting in some type of a building application. And I think that's why they're clearly segregating this at this juncture. So I think I really think it is a moot point that just kind of going forward, it's about future improvements, and the zoning could always change at a future date as well too. So there's always going to be an open item down the road.
And I think I'm good now. I think I probably about as much clarity as I can. I'll certainly reassert. I would still ask that the proviso be removed, and I lastly still state that again. I think the big problem we have here is that because of the way the zoning code is set up, we can't decide. I don't mean we as in any individual. I mean, I guess the code can't decide whether to treat this as a part of a strip mall or as a standalone lot. And the reason we're here is because we're primarily treating it the same as we do as a standalone lot, although intellectually we all understand that that doesn't make any sense. So to say that, hey, if the subway, changes out, there's a difference between how a street tree would be treated, for example, or any of this would be treated if subway is a single standalone property versus if it's part of the overall development. And the whole sort of purpose of this whole concept was to resolve that lack of clarity. And again, there's a difference, I think, between how zoning has decided to treat this in terms of as though it's a standalone lot, and how I think just intellectually and common sense wise, we all see what it is. And I guess I would ask that we not leave this with that still unsettled. And I'm good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members?
Clear as mud, ready to roll.
If there are none, we can go to the next item.
All right, well, this concludes our presentation of dockets. The board will now recess until 11:30 a.m. Consideration of dockets, including public comments, will begin at 11:30 a.m. Please refer to the screen for the public comment rules, and public comments will be accepted, until the close of the recess. Would the board consider a motion to recess until 11:30 a.m.?
I, Ty James, so move.
Alfonso, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to recess until 11:30 a.m. Roll call vote, Ty James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest. Yes, 5 yeas, no nays. The motion carries, and we're now in recess.
I was waiting for Matt to turn his camera on.
If we have the public comment, we have a quorum even without him.
Okay, thank you. He's on now. So we do not have any public comments.
On any of them?
No. Would the board consider a motion to return from recess?
Todd James, so move.
Mara Egan, second.
It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Eggins to return from recess. Roll call vote. Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest. Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. We're back from recess.
Thank you. The public comment forum is now closed, and we will begin with the consideration of dockets and the public comment portion of the meeting. We'll begin with the unfinished business for variances. BZA docket 07421 was withdrawn by the applicant. The next item is BZA docket 07821 for the property at 10100 Morrison Road. This request is for variances to permit the construction of a daycare with excessive front yard setback, a primary entrance not oriented to the street, insufficient ground floor transparency on the primary street, insufficient ceiling height, and parking as the predominant visual element. As a reminder to the board, the staff recommendation is for a 30-day deferral. There are no public comments received, therefore no need for rebuttal.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
In regards to docket BZA 078-21, I move for a 30-day deferral per the recommendation of staff.
Tamara Egan, second.
Thank you. With regard to BZA docket 078-21, it's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Eggins to defer the matter 30 days at the request of staff. Roll call vote. Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest. Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Next item.
The next item is BZA docket 079. This request is for variance to permit the construction of a single-family residence with insufficient rear yard setback. As a reminder to the board, the staff recommendation is for modified approval, subject to 5 provisos. There were no public comments received, therefore no need for rebuttal.
Any additional questions or comments from board members?
Just a quick question to the applicant, just making sure we close this out correctly. He did understand the nature of the modified approval and how he could change the plan in order to comply with how this has been recommended by staff.
Yes, thank you, Todd. I understand. And I'll, go through the process, submit new drawings, and go from there. So thanks for clarifying.
No problem.
Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, for motions in order.
Yes.
I, Todd James, move to adopt the staff's recommendation for BZA docket 079-21 for the requested waiver of Article 11, Section 11.3A1, Table 11.2A for rear yards, and adopt the staff's recommendation of modified approval of the variance and recommending a modified waiver of 2.143 feet to permit a rear yard setback of 7.89 feet and subject to the 5 provisos as noted.
Alfonso, second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll just note, Commissioner James, your numbers are reversed. The waiver is actually the 7.895, not the proposed.
Sorry. I'm reading from the sheet.
You
So
have the numbers, just flip them.
Yeah. No, sorry about that. Thank you for the clarification, and I'll modify my recommendation to adopt that clarification.
No problem. With regards to BZA docket 079-21, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez, to grant the requested waiver as a modified approval of waiver of 7.89 feet with 5 noted provisos, finding that the 9 criteria have been met as it relates to the modified recommendation. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest, yay. 5 yeas, no nays, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you. We'll now begin with the unfinished business for safety and permit decision appeals. The next item is BZA docket 06721 for the property at 2612 Esplanade Avenue. This is an appeal of the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding the determination that the property has not attained legal non-conforming status for an office use. And the applicant has requested a 30-day deferral. There were no public comments received, no need for rebuttal.
Are there any additional questions or comments from board members?
For motions in order.
Proceed.
Madam Chair, I, Todd James, move to defer BZA docket number 067-21 for 30 days.
Tamara Egan, second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 067-21, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Eggins to defer the matter 30 days. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest, yes. 5 yeas, no nays, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you. The next 2 items were earlier consolidated earlier in the meeting. BZA docket 001-22 and 002-22 for the property at 4951 through 4975 Mark Drive. This request is for variances in conjunction with subdivision docket 07321 to permit the creation of the lot with insufficient lot area and insufficient lot depth. As a reminder to the board, the staff recommendation is for approval subject to 3 provisos. There were no public comments received for either item and therefore no need for rebuttal.
Are there any additional questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
For motions in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, I, Todd James, move to adopt the recommendation of the staff for both BZA docket 001-22 and 002-22. As stated, accepting the approval recommended by staff with the 3 noted provisos, understanding that the 9 criteria have been met.
Tamara Egan, second.
Thank you. With regards to consolidated BZA dockets 001-22 and 002-22, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Eggins to grant the requested waivers, finding that the 9 criteria have been met with the 3 noted provisos. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Matthew Rufo,
Yes.
And Candace Forrest, yes. 5 yeas, no nays, the motion carries. Next item.
You. The last item is BZA docket 003-22 for the property at 115 through 129 Robert E. Lee Boulevard. This request is for variances in conjunction with subdivision docket 08221 to permit the creation of a lot with insufficient lot area, insufficient lot width, insufficient permeable open space, insufficient interior side yard setback, insufficient aggregate of side yards for shopping center. And as a reminder to the board, the staff recommendation is for approval subject to 5 provisos. There were no public comments received, therefore no need for rebuttal.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Mr. Granderson, because I just wanted to make sure. I know we were going back and forth and just wanted to quickly get clarity. What specific provisos were you saying were not applicable?
I guess I was saying that all of them weren't applicable. Just quick question, just to before to staff is there's the resub that sort of triggered all of this. So just one thing that maybe staff can answer is just verification that with these, considering that nothing's happening here, that it won't be sort of a variance that's unclosed out, and that we can't, because this variance is a proviso in the resub, and so I just need to make sure that the resub can happen, because the resub can't happen, the sale can't happen. So that's one question. Just want to make sure that that's clarified, that this is a quick, easy closeout, which obviously think it should be. But to answer your question directly, I would say all of them.
We're saying that all of them were not.
Yeah, well, whether it be because of the building permit or whether it be because, again, it's a strip mall and they don't really apply in context.
And I guess the question to staff, just to make sure that it's clear, when I don't know if Mr. Rivers is still on, but when Mr. Rivers mentioned a proviso, I didn't know if he was indicating one proviso wasn't applicable or all provisos. So that's what I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page.
So I think that was Miles who had, initially it seemed like we were talking about one, but then it seemed that it was all. So get that clarification.
And I know, Mr. Rivers, you had mentioned, in your discussion, I didn't know if you were discussing all of the provisos or if you were just addressing one proviso. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that we were clear.
So in order to close out this variance, the way that the provisos are written right now, they would have to submit final development plans showing all of the provisos being met. And then we would sign off on it. And then with any future permit, plan review, whatever, llama would be checked. Assuming that this was closed out, llama will reflect that it was closed out, and there will not be any hold on any future permits.
I guess my question is, what if there are no development plans?
When you speak of it being closed out, what would the applicant do to close out each of these provisos?
So again, the way every variance that comes through happens is that there would be a plan showing the provisos as they're approved. So, and I'm not sure, Miles saying that there's not going to be any submission, any final plan submission. That's a requirement, that there be a final plan requirement. So if the final plan requirement is submitted, it needs to reflect whatever was approved by the board. And then we as staff can verify that the plans are in compliance with the approval that was granted, and we can sign off on the plans. So I guess I'm having trouble with your question because my perspective is that these are, number one is a standard proviso, basically saying that final development plans need to be submitted reflecting all of the requirements of the approval.
I guess my confusion is that and this is existing. There's nothing we would have to have an architect come and draw plans that show that go in and draw an existing building. And, you know, I guess the question is, what is the intent? The intent of the request, obviously, and I think I would hope the intent of the approval would be to allow the building to be, it's an existing strip mall since the 1950s, to allow it to be what it is. We're not asking for anything new. We're not asking to, you know, put anything on the top. We're just asking for the resub to be able to occur. The only reason we have to ask for a variance is because, again, the city's zoning code is treating a unit in a strip mall the exact same way it would treat a building in the middle of the block on Harrison, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but it is how the zoning code has been interpreted, and I understand that. So we're living within that. So I think the intent, or I know the intent of these requests are for the building to be able to stay as is, no changes, no development plan, no nothing, just to stay as it is, and to recognize that this is a building inside of a strip mall, no more, no less, no different, not asking for anything new, nothing different. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to have a development plan for a building that was developed in the 1950s that presently has a goodwill and a.
So is the existing, Miles, just the existing condition is reflected on the subdivision plan?
Yes.
So submit the subdivision plan as your final development plan. It'll be stamped. Assuming that none of these provisos are required, and if the provisos are required, then we would just have to indicate that all of the provisos are met, and we could stamp it and sign off on it.
Right. So no matter what, you're still going to have a new re-subdivision plan that shows the existing plat, and that's what gets submitted to close it out.
All right. Well, if that's it, the resub plan has already been approved by CPC. So if that's, and this is just a proviso in that.
It has to be approved. It has to be approved as the final development plan for the variance. So that when somebody looks up the variance in Llama, they get the plan, which is the subdivision plan showing a stamp reflecting the variance that would be granted by the Board of Zoning Adjustments.
Are there any other questions? Does it, I mean, I don't want to keep opening up discussion, but I feel like I'm trying to make sure that it's clear what the next steps are. If there's any questions, I mean, obviously you can always follow back up with staff, but just making sure that it's clear that at this point there is the recommendation for approval with all of the 5 noted provisos.
Yeah, and if I could just interject, I'm sorry I didn't have my camera on because it's not working right now. If I could just interject, it seems to be that the issue, and Miles, correct me if I'm wrong, is that in order to reflect that provisos 2 through 5 are complied with, there would need to be a new plan devised, or at least there would be we would need to have a plan showing that those have been incorporated into the development plan.
I guess that's right.
Being expressed is that the applicant would be required to produce a new plan to reflect these provisos, which at this point are not being installed. Is that correct, Miles?
Yeah, and you know, offhand, I'm not necessarily even speaking to whether they're met or not met. I guess I'm just speaking to the maintenance of the existing condition. And what my goal here is to ensure that the result is that the existing condition is maintained, no more, no less. There are, with the BGA 7121 that was with the vacant lot, there are some provisos that were added that, you know, the permit, for example, and other things that were added in, I think a total of 7 provisos that would link with the development of a new structure or within this. But this is, I guess what I'm saying here is that while that would perhaps make sense, in this case, we're really just saying, we just kind of just want to leave it alone. And we're here through a weird little nuance of the individual lot scenario being treated as though it's not in a strip mall. I guess I'm just asking that whatever the result of this be, not trigger these things that are not necessarily intended.
So question, Miles. So let me just touch 2 through 4 quickly. On one is just the new plat, essentially, is what gets submitted because of what we're discussing. 2 is tied to the occupancy of that individual property. Number 3, is there any short-term bike parking already on the site? Are there any bike corrals? Are there anything else on that site that may already exist there that actually helps to establish criteria of proviso 3?
So for one is I don't think there are any in front of that actual building, those 4 uses in that building. I don't know whether there exist in the larger strip mall. And third, I don't know whether or not this question is speaking to those 4 units or to the strip mall, which is part of the whole problem of this, is that we're in a strip mall, but the reason we're even before you is because we're treating this as though it's a standalone lot.
So that applies, that's in terms of applicability of number 3. Number 4, with the street tree, that's just Parks and Parkways reviewing the final plat and if they even require a street tree or not. Right? So no matter what, if you turned in a plat, it would still go to Parks and Parkways for them to review the street tree.
And they have probably reviewed that with regard to the resub. And so unless there's anything unique or different here, that should be fine.
Right. So, and that's the point. I mean, there's some of them that this is just kind of subject to the technicality of what we have in front of us. So I think that's just accepting it, not having any provisos that still meet the criteria that needs to be checked off. If we know something's been met, why not keep it within the document just to help to put the belt and suspenders in place that's necessary. So, and then the last one on number 5, I'm assuming that there's already a separate or shared trash refuge area that's already closed off because that's a part of the current building code no matter what. So do we not have an enclosed area for trash?
Well, my concern there again is that the reason we're here is because they're being treated as individual lots.
I got you.
This is not treated like a lot. This is part of the strip mall. So the strip mall would have all of that together, right? So
does it? Not necessarily, because not necessarily, because each tenant could still have a separate trash area behind them that they're still required to close off. Unless there's something recorded on a lot that's showing that they're already doing a shared trash refuge area. So in either case, it's either they have it or it's a shared one. So if it's a shared one that meets the criteria, that hits the checkbox from staff.
The main point is that whether or not it's individual or shared, it should still meet what this requirement is indicating. Well, so that's what the question is.
Well, I guess one of the things I've noticed this a lot, and I want to open a larger conversation, is that there are a lot of unintended consequences that happen sometimes. So we might be in a situation, I don't know, but you might be in a situation where these shared arrangements might have certain criteria that in our 2022 zoning code that weren't in place in 1950 when this was designed. And so although it's been working since 1950 and it's in place, it might work, it might function perfectly fine, but it might not meet 2022 zoning code. And we clearly haven't gotten, and now we're requiring that we do that. And then so now what am I going to have to come back for a 4th variance? Then we're going to kill a 3rd variance, rather, we're going to kill the sale. We're going to do all these things. So I guess what I'm saying is that we sometimes, and this happens a lot in our code in particular, because it's so specific, our zoning code and how it's designed. It is, what I'm saying is at the end of the day, I think there's a fundamental question. Are we trying to maintain the status quo of the shopping center, or are we trying to turn it into something different? If we're trying to maintain the status quo, then I think the safe thing
I don't
to
think
do
it's a
here
matter
is to-
of, I don't think it's a matter of an either or in that scenario. I think with exactly what you said in the beginning is the nature of this re-subdivision putting you into this scenario. It's the same as if you have any other type of construction on an existing property. You're then put into the zoning at that point in time. And so if there's situations where there's things that may need to be updated, we don't know. And so I'm not going to try to go off of possibilities. It's a matter of these are what the provisos are. And if there's discussion at the point where an additional variance may have to come into place, those additional variances are subject to the zoning at that point in time. That's why we've had situations where people have been put under the zoning that was in place at the time that they've submitted their application. That's always been the case.
So
I don't want to make it seem like this is so different. I understand that you're arguing that there's a unique scenario, but it's not so different than what typically comes before us.
So, Madam Chair, just to kind of help clarify this, I'm just going based off of what I'm seeing on Google Map Viewer for right now. It's not showing the latest date of the overheads. But so case in point, behind the Goodwill, behind the Subway right now in the Anytime Fitness, those trash receptacles are actually within the parking area that's shared. So it's not within an enclosed fence area. So that's something that would have to then, if I'm just going based off what we see right now, this is not me going drive around the corner to check this out. That's something that would cause further improvement. So yes, that would have to be a new development plan showing where it would be put in place. So yes, that does become a little bit more problematic and can trigger for future items. So I'm just trying to at least take that preventive. And I guess what we're just trying to say is help us, help you in this instance to really understand what can and cannot get met without making assumptions. We just don't want to do a carte blanche wiping of all of the provisos if we know that some of them are inherently met by the development of the site. And if there's some that actually cause further improvement at this time, then that's a different animal. So,
but I guess my question, and not trying to belabor the point, but are we to decide if the trash receptacles, just as an example, does require additional action to be met? Are we to say that because of that, we don't include that proviso? And if so, what's the reason?
Well, again, because it's the strip mall.
I'm not asking you, Miles, I'm asking either staff or Commissioner James.
And I guess here's my thing, to that point, so I'm glad you asked that. So it does kind of come back to Miles's point about how this site has been developed. A big part of this is where you do look at the limits of the property lines. I think that the city doesn't allow for you to do enclosure of the trash canisters within public right of way. Is that correct, Joseph or Robert?
That's correct.
So we got conditions like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it's currently functioning. So it does open up Pandora's box for the entire strip mall, potentially, if this starts to move that way. So I do see how that there's unintended consequences of how this could play out down the road. So in the case of like with that one, I could see his argument of removing that, but not just doing a complete wipe of the slate on all 5 provisos.
And I'm just trying to, just not that I have an opinion one way or the other. I'm just trying to understand for our purposes how we're able to say in other situations where we've had someone who's brought an item before us and they're now an existing structure that's now requirements have to be met under the new CZO. We tell them that they're required to follow the current CZO. So if it means that they have to make additional improvements, they've been required to make them. So I'm just trying to understand in this scenario, why is it different where we would make the argument that they're not required to meet the current standards that are in place?
So I think a lot of that ties back to the fact that we're dealing with a resub as opposed to new construction or a waiver of the constructed environment. Yes, I think that's where I'm really starting to see like how this is a little bit more problematic. This is being tied to a transaction in order for that other development next to it to advance. So I guess look, that's just my opinion on it.
And I mean, I'm just playing it out just because,
I appreciate it.
It's not an opinion one way or the other. I'm just trying to play it out just to make sure that practically speaking, we're operating appropriately given the circumstances.
And this is I guess for me, like, this is one of those special cases of this type of lot development. Like, I mean, there's a whole host of things that's going to have to still get worked out with this site. And yes, it is a strip mall development that traditionally would have been handled differently on one big parcel lot of record. But because it is an older condition of essentially these are all condoed off, and I think I've understood the history on the site. One family owned it, then it was separated, or one entity owned it, and the vested parties then took ownership of the individual parcels, with that back street being the right of way. So that's another reason of kind of how we've got to this point. What we would traditionally view as the front is actually the back, and vice versa. So this is a nuanced site that is rather different than most of what we would traditionally see in future reviews, or just reviews we've seen in the past. So I think there's some justification around striking some, but not just a clear slate.
And I would just frame it in the sense of the facts around the resub as opposed to this just being a historical site. And it's mainly because we've had situations where someone has been bumped into the current CZO, even though it's a historical site. So I just don't want it to be that our argument is because this is how it's been all along. I can understand it for purposes of a resub as opposed to saying this is how it's been all along.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. The resub, and again, the buildings are developed lot line to lot line. So you really don't have any place without going into the public right away where some of these improvements would have to be captured.
Any other questions? I know we had a lot of back and forth. I think we're at a point where we're getting clearer. So to get back to the provisos, because I know this particular proviso with the parking, with the trash refuge, are we discussing scratching it, or what are you?
I mean, I'm just one person.
I'm trying to figure out if we get rid of, because my question is, and I know we haven't gotten to a point of voting, but the reason why I'm asking is because based on the way that this report is written, certain provisos were put in place to account for concerns that were established by staff. So then if something is taken off the table, does it then change the recommendation in any way?
So I guess that would go back to staff. If we were to remove some of these items, does that change the position? I know it's subject to this board, but just asking for the staff's opinion.
And I'm only asking because I don't know if I'm trying to figure out, making sure that everything is satisfied, basically.
So, and again, I'm not sure if this answers your question, but in order to close out the variance application, we will need a plan submitted that reflects the compliance with all of the provisos. So in terms of next steps, the next steps are dependent upon which provisos are retained. And to the extent that any are retained, we would need to have that, if none of them are retained, like I had said before, the subdivision plan would suffice as the development plan that we could stamp, close out the variance request. The database would reflect that it's closed out, and it wouldn't be a flag on any future permit applications. Does that answer your question? And maybe I don't understand the question.
I'm just trying to, it's hard for me to verbalize it. I think what I'm trying to figure out is, are the 9 criteria still met for purposes of granting the waiver if any of these provisos are taken off the table. And I guess that may be a question to Joseph.
Yeah, I'm reviewing the provisos again, and I think, based on the nature of the provisos, I'm just going to list them out again, in that they're about interior side yard, lot area, lot depth, permeable open space, and again, the side yards, if I didn't already say that. None of them, for example, none of them are about parking, which is proviso 2, or about trash.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
Proviso 5. I think, the one that that is most integrally tied is number 4, about the street tree in terms of permeability. But yeah, I think, again, this is just kind of the nature of, the applicant is asking for something. And so in a way that we can improve the conditions while still granting the waiver, is kind of the standard, one of the reasons that provisos are traditionally included as well. So I hope that answers the question a bit more directly.
It does. Yep. Thank you. And I think even with the street tree, it's usually subject to a review by Parks and Parkways. So if it's, to Mr. Granderson's point, if it's not feasible, given the circumstances of the lot, it wouldn't happen. So it's only if it's feasible to do it. So is there an issue, Mr. Granderson, with retaining that particular proviso?
I think that one's probably the most retainable because I believe that one's already been reviewed by Parks and Parkways and in the subdivision plan.
Okay.
And what about number 2 on the parking? Just knowing that the site is already configured, they do share parking between 2 separate parcels. Is that not something that could just be remedied with the holder? Because is the parking part of the public right of way? Is the parking tied to something else?
Both. There is parking. So the parking on the interior is private. I believe some of the parking on the back is private, and some of the but I know at least some of the parking on the back is public right of way. So it's what I'm calling the back. What Todd, as you noted, is officially the front.
Right.
So there's a mixture of how it is on how it's set up, and I think part of it's just it's been functioning a certain way. It's kind of complicated. We'd have to don't necessarily want to bring in all these third parties and different owners of different properties and all of that. And so
my only concern is, given how long it's been in existence, I don't know if it's going to meet what would be required currently. And that's it's like, if we put that in and then it triggers an issue where they may not have a sufficient number of parking spaces, for instance. That's the thing that I think might be an issue, just given how long this building has been there. The parking number may have been different 50 years ago, 50 plus.
So it comes back to, once again, because we're only strictly dealing with that resub, we do have these items that do have a bigger impact, that are going to cause other properties to become party to an agreement in order to help remedy the issue. So like with the parking, it does become a little bit more problematic with the trash refuge area, just because of how this is all configured right now. A totally different example of something, yes, that would be something that would prolong this being remedied.
And I did forget the way that lot is situated, that the frontage is a little different than what you think of as the front and what is actually the front. So I do acknowledge the trash part probably is an issue given how it's situated.
Yeah.
And even so, because it's lot line to lot line, you have to knock down some building and convince an existing tenant to change their lease.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing, again, not that a motion has been put forward, but
I would strongly
believe that seems to only leave 2 provisos at this point.
I believe that's 1 and 3.
Yeah.
And 3 with the bike parking. Yes. I mean, even what they're talking about is 2 short-term bicycle parking spaces, not promoting one entity over another. That's no different from someone calling like a YLC with the parking program and getting a bike, just buying one to put in front of the building, and that's it. It becomes a moot point. I think that's to me, that's like the easiest remedy of items that could be addressed.
Okay.
And it doesn't cost the applicant. I think outside of what, maybe like $100 or something like that. I mean, there's ways to remedy that one. Just considering there's a financial benefit to what's happening with this parcel in some capacity. I shouldn't say financial benefit because that triggers a whole nother point of nine criteria. So scratch. At the end of the day, it's what's in
I get it.
Thank you.
All right, I think, is there any other questions? I know some of the other board members may not have weighed in, but I'm just trying to make sure any other questions from you guys, or are we ready to go with a motion?
Or did we further confuse this as mud for everybody? See Tamara smirking, so that means yes, I've confused her more.
No other questions, so is there a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, for motions in order.
Go for it.
All right, I, Todd James, move to accept the staff's recommendation for BZA docket 003-22 with the understanding that the 9 criteria have been met. Regarding the waiver, for the variance for Article 14, Section 14.3A1, Table 14.2. But my modification to the report would be to strike 3 of the 5 provisos and only retain proviso 1 and proviso 1 and proviso 3.
Alfonso, second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 003-22, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to grant the requested waivers for Article 14, Section 14.3.A.1, Table 14.2 for lot area, lot width, permeable open space, interior side yard on Robert E. Lee and on West End, an aggregate of side yards, striking 3 of the 5 provisos and retaining provisos 1 and 3, finding that the 9 criteria have been met. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
and Candace Forrest, yay. 4 yays, no nays, the motion carries.
And now would the board consider a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Todd James, so moves.
Second. Alfonso.
It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to adjourn. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Tamara Eggins,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
and Candace Forrest, yay. 4 yays, no nays, the motion carries, and our meeting is adjourned. Have a good day and Happy New Year, everybody.